Hey everyone, Elliott Skier here from APS with 5 quick tips for better starts. Now, these are tips that I use both in the real world and in the sim, and are ways and methodologies of practicing to help yourself get off the line better, smoother, and more consistently. So with that, let's dive on into tip number 1 and get it going. Tip number 1, practice your starts. Now I know that sounds obvious, but hear me out. There is one trick I do to help put myself under some pressure when I'm working on practice starts, and it's this right here. By typing in a chat message such as go, and then using the subsequent disappearance of that chat message as a mock starting light is a great way to put yourself under time-sensitive pressure to get a good launch. This is also a great way to work as a team with standing starts and rolling starts as a way for everyone to have an ideal and identical launch window to get off the line in a realistic manner. This is also a great way to work on your timing of rolling starts and trying to look ahead while using your peripheral to see the lights go out. There is one thing I want to take a closer look at here as well. By both dragging brake and applying throttle on a rolling start, you give yourself the opportunity to always have the car preloaded and ready to go for whenever the guy in front of you reacts. This is a great way to not get caught off rhythm when trying to get to throttle on a rolling start. Tip number 2, burn clutch, not rubber. In an ideal start, you're going to be coming off the clutch to somewhere around halfway and slowly releasing it until the car is fully rolling. Ideally using a little bit more clutch than you would anticipate to make sure you don't get the wheels to spin. If you take out a little too much clutch or do it a little too quickly, the car might bog down. To me, this is fine as a start, as I've still gone off the line pretty well and I've minimized the wheel spin off the line. But then of course, if you go into a start with full throttle and dump the clutch, it does react surprisingly well and come off at a good speed. But the problem is you've now put a lot of heat into the surface of the tire, but not the core of the tire itself. In the sim, this causes a issue of effectively the tire overheating early on and leading to potential spins early on in the first lap. Tip number 3, practice offline. Rarely are you going to go into turn 1 on an ideal line, so it's worth putting in a couple private practice laps running offline, running inside, running outside, and simulating a car to your left or right. These are great ways to see just how much you're going to have to pinch off a corner or how quickly that outside wall is going to come back against you. You can also do this with a team or a group of friends on doing mock starts and running through the corners and effectively through a lap side by side, just to anticipate what you might see when coming to a start in an official race. Tip number 4, give yourself an out. Here we are looking at the start of a league race earlier this year at Watkins Glen, and we're riding above the 3rd place car going into turn 1. Right here, as the car in front, the pole sitter, hits the brakes, you can see that he is in line with the car in front, slightly offset to the left. Now, if we're thinking of places that he can go if an issue arises, the left clearly seems to be the better option because he has less churning to do while under brakes to get through the gap. Now let's see if he goes to the left and how he might end up being on the outside going into turn 1. Well, he did, but that didn't quite go to plan. So let's go back to that image of the center line of the car and discuss what he might have been able to do differently to put himself in a better position to get through turn 1 cleanly and possibly even battling for the lead. So here again we can see the center line of his car lined up to the pole sitter in front. Now he is slightly offset to the left, and visually this is giving him a clear view looking down the left hand side. Now as we saw though, it wasn't quite enough for him to be able to both be on the brakes and turn left to get around the car in front. The friction circle was just not going to allow that much motion to happen through the tire. And so this is the sort of circumstance where if I have this amount of room to the left and to the right of the car directly ahead, I would prefer to have my center line of the car be offset with the car in front entirely. This gives me a much greater opportunity to move the car quickly and under control while still decelerating to hopefully end up next to the car in front of me at whatever point I do. But being able to offset yourself an ample amount is not only a good defensive maneuver, but it also gives you the best preemptive area to go if you get caught out by something happening in front or behind you. Tip number 5. Set a sensible goal. Now, I know this doesn't sound like a huge tip, but going into a start with realistic expectations to what can be gained and lost is probably the best thing you can do to get through safely and consistently. Personally, my goal when I'm starting a real race or a sim race is to get through in the same position I started. If I gain anything, I consider a bonus, and my whole goal is if I start 5th to come out 5th, if I start 7th to come out 7th, and anything added onto that is a cherry on top. But just making it through clean with a whole race in front of me is always the best sort of start. As always, thanks for watching and best of luck in all of your upcoming races.